Hi Quilty friends. I just wanted to show you what I'm doing lately. I have some pillowcases here and I've been making these for my grandchildren, and so each one's going to get one for Halloween. And as you see, there's a variety of them here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each one and I'm going to put their favorite snack inside so that they have like a, and I'm going to tie it with a ribbon and then give it to them. And they're going to get a snack rather than candy because they'll get plenty of candy trick-or-treating. So I'm going to give them each their favorite snack. This is a great thing for your littlest ones to your biggest ones, because I even gave one to Claire, who's 18 and a freshman at college, and she was thrilled. Hers was stuffed a little fuller, but she was home for fall break. So it's a great gift. We actually had a customer that told us about this, and she told us that her grandchildren get more excited about what the pillowcase is going to look like than what's inside. And she does it for Christmas and their birthdays, and she never buys wrapping paper because she always just puts their gift inside of a pillowcase. And she does things like, sometimes it's for the actual holiday, so it looks like a birthday, or sometimes it's they played soccer that year, so it's soccer balls. But it's a great way to use those beautiful large prints that sometimes we don't know what to do with because we don't want to cut it up into little pieces. Okay, so we're going to make a pillowcase. And what you have is you have a piece of fabric, a little piece of fabric, a little strip with the fabric, and you fold that in half and press it. Okay, this becomes the flange, this part. Okay, and then you have a little bit bigger piece of fabric, and this becomes the cuff, this part. And then you have a larger piece of fabric, and that's the body of the pillowcase. Okay, so you take the flange and you pin it to one raw edge of your cuff piece, and you pin it all the way across. And you actually spend more time pinning, I think, with this project than sewing, and you pin it all the way across. Okay, so I'm going to end up pinning all the way down there. Okay, but I'm going to stop because I actually have one pre-pinned, so I'm just going to show you the layers here. Then you take your large piece of fabric and you come back and you pin it. Okay, all the way across. Okay, so see, I'm just using the same pins, and I'm just repinning. And you do that all the way down. So it takes a little while, but not too bad. Okay, now I have one already completely pinned here. So see, this one has the cuff, the flange, and now my large piece of fabric. And so what ends up happening is the cuff and the large piece of fabric are right sides together with the flange sandwiched in between. Okay, now comes the fun and different. So now I take this, and you have to fold the large piece of fabric up so that it is shorter than your cuff. Okay, now some people roll it, and that'll work too. Whatever you got to do, but you don't want to interfere with your pins here. So I don't have it so that I can get to my pins. I don't have it all the way up close. So now I take the other end edge, the long edge, the cuff, and I bring it up, and now I have to pin this all the way across here. And since I don't have one that's this far, you're going to have to watch. This is kind of heavy, okay? So you really want it on a table. You don't really want it in your lap. And you need to pay attention that you're keeping your raw edges together, because you're only going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam. So if your raw edges aren't together, then some of your pieces will escape and they won't be caught. So pay really close attention that your raw edges are together. And keep pinning. Okay, it takes about an hour to put one of these together. But that's if you come and get one of our kits, because then when we cut the kits for you, we straighten all the edges, and so you're ready to go home and just put it together and sew. Now you can do the kits a couple ways. We have some pre-made where we've selected the fabrics and they're all ready for you to take home, or you can customize them. You can come in and pick the fabrics that you want, or you can come in and say, I want this big fabric for the major part of the pillowcase. Would you please pick a cuff and a flange? And we'll do that for you too. So whatever it is that you want to do, but as long as you buy a kit, everything is pre-cut and ready to go. So you can go home and just sew. Well, you go home and pin and then sew, because it's a lot of pinning.
And the kits are only $14.99.
Yeah, so kits are $14.99. So it's not a big. And they come with written directions as well as you have access to this video. So you have lots of help to get that first one done. A bit longer because you're getting used to what you're supposed to do. First time you do anything, it always takes a little longer. But after that, I'm sure you can do one in an hour. Now, what happens is you want to keep this edge, all your salvages, but then down at this edge, see the salvages, I've got all different, they don't all lead off exactly at the edge. See, that's way shorter than this is. And that's okay, because we're going to trim it once we get it sewn together. So nice straight 1/4 inch seam, because you've got that little flange in there, and if you make your 1/4 inch
And your
uneven, your
stitch
flange.
length and thread.
Okay, stitch length, I'm using a 1.8 like you would for piecing, because you want this to be really nice and strong. I'm using regular cotton quilt. I think Aurifil is on here. So either the Aurifil or the Superior Pima cotton. Almost there, and I did back stitch at the beginning and end because I'm gonna pull this down. I don't want my stitches. Although we are gonna end up trimming off but at that point we will have already turned it, so it'll be okay. All right, we're gonna take the pins out and then the magic happens. See how our combination looks together. That's always fun. Okay, all you do is take hold of what's the body, the big part of your pillowcase, and pull it out.
It's almost as fun as birthing a Mondo bag.
It is almost as fun as birthing a Mondo bag. This one is actually for Jake. He's 15. The ghosts and the black and the gray seem to match his,
15 angsty.
Yeah,
Attitude.
it does. So this has got some black, some gray, and some brown in here with the trees. The trees look kind of spooky, and sometimes you don't want to approach that 15-year-old boy. That's how I feel about these trees. He's not always in a good mood.
No. I'm his mother. He is not. He's a grump.
All right, there we go. So we see how it all looks together. All right, now we have to press it. All right, and then the directions don't say, but I'm going to add a line of top stitching, and I'll show you where. So I've got to press it from both sides. I got to get this all nice and flat. I'm not going to press that fold in yet until I press from the other side. Okay. Now, as I press this, I'll press the fold in.
Oh, at the top of the cup.
Yes, this
Okay.
fold. See, now I know it's flat on the other side. This iron needs a little water. Let it press. A little water. That's better. Okay. Got a lot of cord here. Okay, so see this edge, I've got all the salvages together, but I've got a wobbly edge here, so I'm gonna have to cut a little more off. But first I'm gonna run a line of top stitching right here. Okay? And that'll kind of hold the cuff in place.
You can see on these that nice line. Gives it a nice finished look. Whoops, not there.
All right, so we're gonna put that line of top stitching there.
She lengthened her stitches to 3.0.
I did, so it has a nice, more decorative look rather than those teeny little.
And for those of you with the HP feet, she put it so that her needle is going through the hole on the HP foot, so it's just a very accurate 1/8 of an inch.
And remember, you can do either edge of the foot. I'm using the inside edge right now so that my whole foot is anchored. So see, it was important that I pressed well, because now I'm actually sewing this in place. I'm not top stitching or back stitching because I'm gonna now trim off these edges anyway. Okay, now it's time to trim, and it's not hard. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold it with these raw edges together so it'll fit better on my mat. Okay, so all my salvages are together, and I want to be sure that I cut off all the salvages. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure I'm this side of the salvages, and I've got the line of my ruler on one out on the fold here of the fabric. And I'm going to trim this off. Okay, now I have to do this side. And this side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold it a little so it fits on my board. And I'm not going to worry about the salvages here coming together. I'm only bringing the salvages here together because these are off because they're different fabrics. But now I'm going to have to trim all the way to here, see, in order to get rid of that salvage. So I have to trim, this edge is going to get trimmed a little deeper. And again, I have my line of the ruler along that fold. Okay. Okay, now we're going to sew the side together. Okay, but we're going to do it with a French seam. And a French seam is a little different, and you can see one here inside. Okay, what a French seam results in is no raw edges showing. Okay, so we're going to do a French seam here. So a French seam starts out with wrong sides together instead of right sides together. Okay, and I'm going to start down here so that this bottom edge is perfectly together. If this doesn't come out exactly together, that's okay. But I am going to start out down here so that, because I want this bottom edge to come right together, because that's the part that everybody's going to see. That part I can take care of in my last seam across the top of the pillowcase. So I'm going to put a couple of pins in here until I get past the flange and the all right. If I have any trouble, I can change to the walking foot, but I don't think I will. We'll see. If I do, we'll change it. Threads through that hole, it'll get caught.
We're back to 1/4 inch seams and 1.8 stitch length
Yes.
for piecing.
And you are going to back stitch here, and you're using a 1/4 inch, although we're going to change that on the second half of the French seam. Here's the only part that can be difficult to get over. Okay, I've got to get my raw edges together. When we're done with this, we're going to press this seam open and then press it back on itself, and you'll see. The second step will look more familiar to you because it'll be right sides together. The question I get a lot when we do this class is this the kind of seam that's on your blue jeans? And it is not. The seam on your blue jeans is a flat felled seam. It has a different construction method. A French seam is what you see a lot of times in a very fancy dress that has a very sheer fabric, so that the raw edges don't show or shadow through. Okay. But you actually do see it on pillowcases. So you go home and look at your even store-bought pillowcases and they will have one. Okay, now we're going to press this open. I'm going to try to do that without pressing a big crease in my pillowcase. This is going to look really odd to you because you're going to be looking at the right sides of your fabric and you'll see these ugly seam edges here. We're going to fix it in 1 minute. Okay, now we're going to turn the pillowcase inside out. And now I'm going to fold right on my seam line. Okay, and put a couple pins in. Okay, this is really thick here. So you're going to have a lot of, you may have trouble going over it, and again, if you do, you can try your walking foot. We'll see. Usually if you kind of get a running start at it. I usually do pin this only because this is a little harder to see when you're at the sewing machine. You don't have raw edges. Okay, we're gonna sew this. I'm gonna change to a little bit wider foot, and we're gonna sew this at about a 1/2 inch. A traditional French seam is sewed at 1/4 and then 3/8 to keep your normal 5/8 inch seam, but this isn't that important whether this is exactly 3/8, and if we sew it at closer to a 1/2 inch, it's easier to be sure that our raw edges don't poke out when we turn it right side out. So we don't have to be quite so fussy about whether or not it's exactly 3/8. If I'm going to put the walking foot on. If you were making a garment and you had to have it exactly 3/8, usually you're better off if you trim that 1/4 inch even a little more before you try, because otherwise your raw edges stick out. Okay, and I'm not gonna sew with a really small stitch here because that makes it difficult for the foot to grab on. So see, I'm just using the edge of my foot, and you do need the back stitch at the beginning and end. And this is the part where it's really thick. So it's best if you get a running start at it and just go right over it without stopping. If you stop there, that's when you have difficulties. So if you do have difficulties, you may need to use the hand wheel to turn it to get it through that. Remember, you always turn the hand wheel toward you, not away from you. I'm not very good at taking the pins out as I come to them. And I'm in a back stitch here. Okay, now we only have one seam left, and that's across the top here. And it's up to you. We've had customers that do a French seam across there too. It's not really totally necessary. It doesn't show like it does here down at the edge of the cuff. Okay? But if you don't do a French seam, which I'm not going to do, then I suggest you sew it twice, once at a half, and again back stitch at the beginning and end. Okay, and I'm going to take my stitch length down to 1.8 for here. I did not here because it's too difficult to get over that big hump of fabric.
You said before sometimes you need to trim the bottom.
Trim here?
At the bottom where you're sewing now.
Oh, yes. If mine isn't bad, so I'm going to easily catch this in both my 1/2 and 1/4. But if this is really off, you can just trim it straight so that your raw edges match. If it's more than 1/4 of an inch off, then you probably want to trim it because you won't catch it in that second stitching. Okay, now I'm going to move my needle. I'm going to move my needle so that it's over here. And And I'm moving my needle up to 8 or a 7. Let's go with. And now I'm going to sew again, and I can use the edge of my presser foot again as I move the needle.
So now she's sewing between the line of stitching she made previously and the raw edge of the pillowcase.
Yep.
And she moved the needle toward the edge of the foot so that it would be easier to sew. And she can just use the edge of her foot.
Right, I can still use
To
the edge of
line
my
up.
foot. Okay. All right. And there's really no need, usually we would trim these corners, but a pillowcase gets lots of washing in that, so don't bother to trim it, just let the corners be. They'll turn out. There's not a lot of bulk there. And there you have your pillowcase. Fun, with a few extra threads.
Well, how
Super
fun.
easy. If you have any trouble, refer to the video or stop in. We're glad to help you anytime. As I said, the kits are $14.99. You can customize your own or pick one of ours. They're fun for Halloween, they're fun for Christmas, they're fun for birthdays. Just a great gift anytime, and the money you'd spend on wrapping paper, you can